All right, perfect. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us on today's webinar. My name is Eric Jeffers. I'm the Business Development Manager at PortalGuard. PortalGuard's an innovator in cybersecurity. We provide identity management solutions such as single sign-on, self-service password reset, and two-factor authentications. Today's webinar, we're going to be focusing on the new features found in PortalGuard version 6, SSO protocols supported by PortalGuard, and the SSO proxy. We'll also be joined by a very special guest with Kushan Gampalawadage from Neumann University to share their journey with PortalGuard. Before we get started, just have a couple housekeeping items. There'll be a Q&A session after the presentation. So if we can hold off on asking any questions till the very end. If you do have a question, feel free to type it in the chat box, and I will monitor those and ask those at the end of the presentation. After that, if there's any more questions, please feel free to ask. Now, without further ado, we'll turn our time over to Greg Browinski. Greg is the Chief Technology Officer with Pistolstar. He's been with us for 19 years. He's had a big hand in developing the Pistolstar product lines, as well as overseeing a very talented technical support team. So Greg, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you very much, Eric. Okay, so to start, we'll do some slides. We'll start with just some top-level information about Pistolstar Company for those that aren't familiar with us. And then we'll dive right into the three main feature areas of PortalGuard. So those are self-service password reset, web-based single sign-on, multi-factor authentication. So those are the big three tent-pole feature sets that we have. We'll take a little bit deeper dive into the PortalGuard user interface, a couple of things that make us unique in that regard. We'll talk about some administrator functionality. Then we'll throw it over to Kushan so he can give us some background about Neumann University and where they were and where they are now with PortalGuard. He'll give us a demonstration, and then, as Eric mentioned, we'll wrap up with some questions and answers. Okay. So Pistolstar itself was founded in New Hampshire in 1999. So we are an authentication expert. So that is our bread and butter. It is pretty much all that we do, and we do it very well. PortalGuard itself is our current flagship product. It's coming up on its 10th anniversary. And one of the things that we try to do is we try to strike a balance between usability and security. It's easy to err on either side, but being able to create products that allow our customers to decide for themselves how usable they want some features, how secure they want others, is one of our big points. We do sell PortalGuard and all of our products across all verticals, but we are specialists in higher ed with over 50% of our customers in higher education. And last on this slide, one of the key things that we have going for us is our white glove technical support. So when you call in for support, whether it's an email or you're calling in or live chat, you're actually reaching live engineers, developers as well, support it directly. So you're going to get answers to your questions right away. Okay. And a little bit more about Pistolstar. So again, striking that balance between usability and security is a real mainstay. It's one of the things that drives all of our product development. A key point that we have is actually PortalGuard itself. The pricing model is very different from our competitors. We do not charge per user per month or anything like that. It is flat server-based pricing, and that is actually the PortalGuard server. So however many applications you have does not factor into the pricing. However many users you have doesn't factor into the pricing unless you need multiple PortalGuard instances, but you can have tens of thousands of users on a single PortalGuard server, so it makes it very cost-effective. It makes it very easy to there is no true up that you have to worry about, especially with education where the user counts can fluctuate so much. You don't have to worry about any of that with PortalGuard. The UI, we have a whole section of this presentation devoted to that, so we'll get into how customizable it is and how you can brand it. Definitely helps cut down on help desk calls. If users see a UI that is comforting, it's familiar to them, they don't have to worry about potentially being phished. Password reset, it's available for all users in your organization. So for higher ed, for example, it could be students, faculty, and staff. Being able to actually offer up single sign-on right through an integrated portal is one of the nice things about PortalGuard as well. You don't need to have separate pages for different applications. The links that you have, whether it's bookmarks in end users' browsers, whether it is a CMS that you have, everything is just integrated. It's well integrated. A lot of different choices for you on the login front. So it could be hardware-based tokens, could be just password. That's still very common. Maybe it's name, password, and soft tokens. You'll see as we talk more today, there are a plethora of options when it comes to PortalGuard. And so being able to log in with different users using different types is a key point. Also, authenticating against multiple directories, whether it is multiple Active Directory domains, whether it's multiple forests, that are independent from one another, whether it's SQL-based directories as well. A single PortalGuard instance can authenticate against all of those different types in real time. And then the last point here is PortalGuard itself is a software-based product. So that means that it can run on premises in your own data center. It can run in your own cloud tenant, or it can be both for a hybrid approach. And so we see a lot of people doing that now for redundancy. Maybe the on-prem is the primary one, and then if that were to go down, for example, then they can fall back to using a cloud-based instance of PortalGuard. Okay. So let's dive into some of the main features of PortalGuard. So we're going to start with the self-service. And so this can be password reset, it can be account unlock, could be both, could be password recovery, a whole bunch of different things that we have. But so a couple of the key points here is that end users can reset forgotten passwords. That's the most common self-service, and everybody knows why. And still, passwords are the bane of everybody's existence, but they haven't gone away yet. So being able to provide end users the ability to reset forgotten passwords by themselves at any time of day and to do it in a secure fashion is one of the things. It's the longest tenured feature within the PortalGuard product. And so again, it's something that is well vetted. Just about every customer that we have uses this in some fashion, but being able to authenticate the user when they've forgotten their password using challenge answers, maybe it's using an OTP to a cell phone, for example, or a hardware token, or requiring both challenge answers and a one-time passcode for multi-factor for self-service. Those are all in play with PortalGuard. It's all configuration-based. There is no API to worry about. But so we can allow the self-service password reset from a bunch of different access methods. So one, for example, being direct browser access. We also have this is actually browser agnostic. So it could be a Mac. It could be, you can see here, Android or iPhones, for example. We use the Bootstrap open source framework. And so what that does for us is it makes sure that the PortalGuard UI is responsive right out of the gate. So you don't have to worry about, you don't have to invest in a lot of development resources to get a professional looking logon screen or to have PortalGuard do that. It is out of the box. So we also have some options around being able to do a password reset and force enrollment from a workstation logins. So for example, here's a shot of Windows 10. This is using the PortalGuard desktop component. This is a free component. It's included in all of our licensed models of PortalGuard. So this can allow users to not only reset a forgotten password right from a Windows logon machine. We also can enforce the enrollment, which is a real critical piece when it comes to password reset. Being able to, when users know the password, being able to recognize that they have not answered, let's say, challenge questions, or they haven't given you a phone number or an alternate email address, being able to prompt them for that when they're logging into a workstation is a real benefit. It's definitely one of the more specialized features within PortalGuard that gives you that ability to set that up ahead of time, so that way when users do forget their password, they're able to recover it themselves. And so here you can see it just launches a browser shell in this case to do a password reset. And not only does it work for Windows 7, 8, nobody uses 8 anymore, Windows 10, it's all supported. We also have that working for the Mac desktop as well. Okay. And on the self-service side of things, in addition to challenge questions, not a lot of people that's kind of getting phased out. A lot of people are worried about social engineering, being able to get, go onto somebody's Facebook page and determine some of those answers enough anyway to reset somebody's password without them, doing it themselves. We also, PortalGuard has really put forth a big effort to become an integrator for a lot of different one-time passcode methods. So there are some standard ones that you would expect, like SMS and email, alternate email address. We've added other things, for example, like Duo Push. We find is very big. It's a great offering. It is a third-party solution, but we are integrating with it right out of the box, so it's very easy to configure and enable it. Google Authenticator is still very common. PortalGuard 6.1, we're actually adding support for 3 items on here. So one is FIDO U2F tokens, smart cards, and voice biometrics. Those are all in 6.1. But otherwise, YubiKey, old style HMAC OTP tokens, being able to print OTPs on a little sheet of paper, you put them in your wallet. That's a nice standby as well. So a whole bunch of different options, and we just continue to add new options to that list and just kind of grow that stable of, so that way you can make your choice or choices, and it does not need to be an all or nothing. We actually have a lot of folks that use Duo Push for IT, and then SMS is something that can be for most of the other users. Okay. Also, last on this password reset feature, I just want to spotlight that PortalGuard itself has a mobile app that can do this specifically. It's very straightforward to use. It's available for iPhones and Android. The enrollment is very easy. You actually take a picture of a QR code. That will in turn, that's all you have to do for enrollment. Once you do that, you can actually, it's a one-touch password reset. It can also generate some familiar passwords for you based on answers that you give, so that way it's easier to remember. The password is easier to remember, but that's something that's available. Again, no charge for that, all free to use with the base PortalGuard license. Let's talk about that second feature set within PortalGuard. So this is single sign-on. There are many different ways of doing this. So for example, some of the ways that have been around for a long time include identity federation. These are protocols that are standards across all industries, whether it is SAML, CAS is very popular in higher education. WS Federation is used almost exclusively with Microsoft products nowadays. Shibboleth is another one that's open source, based on SAML. And then there are other 2 on there, the OAuth v2 and OpenID Connect. Those are coming in version 6.2. We already have a couple people using those in beta. So again, expanding the options that we have, trying to maintain our standing as an open platform, that adopts all of these, the standard protocols and specifications. So we continue to do that. So identity federation is just one option for single sign-on. There are still many websites, whether they are internal and they're custom developed or whether they are cloud-based, there are still many that do not support identity federation. And so within PortalGuard version 6, we released a new option for that that's web-based proxy that can give single sign-on to those legacy web apps, we refer to them as. And so this is a really big win because it basically opens the door to all those other apps that that you don't have federation for. It's very straightforward to set up. There's little to no client-side configuration to actually get it working. So it's a very small footprint in your environment, and we're very excited about using that and kind of opening up single sign-on to so many other apps that don't support those standard protocols. The last one on this slide relates to Kerberos single sign-on. So one of the things, and you hear single sign-on thrown around so much these days, we have this phrase called true single sign-on. What we consider true single sign-on is for somebody they go to their desk, they log into their workstation with their Active Directory name and password. And so true single sign-on is that workstation login should be the only login they need to do during the day. If they launch a browser at that point, they try to go to email or they try to go to any web applications, they should not be prompted again for credentials. And so Kerberos is what can allow that to happen. PortalGuard itself runs on IIS, so it supports Kerberos implicitly. So if they do try to go to, let's say, Office 365, and you federated Office 365 with your PortalGuard instance, Office 365 pushes the user's browser to PortalGuard. PortalGuard performs Kerberos with the workstation. They don't see any prompt from PortalGuard, and then they just get single sign-on right into Office 365. And Kerberos also works with the SSO proxy as well when you have it set up for PortalGuard-based authentication. Okay. So I want to continue on and start talking about security now. So not just multi-factor, but security in general. One of the things that we hear about often is from some of our competitors or built-in products like ADFS, for example. If you're logging in and the password's expired, not enough products are very clear that the username and password you may have given was correct, but that the password's expired. PortalGuard is very clear about these error messages that come up. You can see if the password's expired, we're going to actually tell the user whether it just occurred, whether it occurred 2 weeks ago. They're going to be able to change that password themselves. They're not going to have to call the help desk. So besides being able to have that status reflected at runtime, PortalGuard can also send out automated password expiration reminder emails. So a certain number of days beforehand, you can start having this automated process, notify users. But of course, there's still the folks that ignore those, and so in that case, you have the prior screen. PortalGuard is very good about also telling users when a password is sufficiently complex. So this is the case whether they are changing a known password, let's say, for example, that's expired, whether they are resetting a forgotten password. The user will actually see, as they type in their new password, the rules that have been configured and are being enforced by PortalGuard will be clearly updated as they are satisfied in the PortalGuard UI. So this is can generate, unfortunately, a lot of help desk calls. Users don't know when they're trying to set a password what the new rules are, or it's not clear if their password meets those rules. This feature itself takes care of both of those. Okay. Getting more towards multi-factor authentication, one of the things that we still hear a lot about is that fear of trying to throw a big switch in your environment and enabling two-factor for everybody. There's going to be a huge amount of pushback, and you're right. There are a lot of people that don't want to do two-factor. They like just straightforward name password. So one of the things that we added last year was two-factor opt-in. So you do not need to have two-factor required across the board. You can enable it in the security policy, but then allow the end user to determine whether they want two-factor for themselves. So they can actually do that enrollment if they are, they can actually opt in, for example, if they are enrolling their phone. Again, phone is very common as an authentication method within PortalGuard. So you can allow them to opt in for two-factor during that enrollment when they're doing a login to PortalGuard. And at any time, they can also go to the PortalGuard account management page, and they can enable or disable multi-factor from their account management page in PortalGuard after they've authenticated fully. Okay. As I had described, and on that other slide where we had about 15 different one-time passcode options, you can allow end users to choose their own defaults. Two-factor does not need to be as onerous as it's usually portrayed to be. So you can actually allow end users, an admin can select which multi-factor options are allowed in the security policy for users or for groups or for OUs. You can have as many security policies as you want, and you can apply them at different levels in your environment. But so within that, once the admin has configured, okay, all these are available for the end user to use, you can still allow the end user to choose which one should be their default. So for example, if they're logging in, maybe they want to use Duo Push, maybe they like Google Authenticator because they don't need a cell phone signal in order to use that. That's all fine. And again, controlled by the admin. Okay. So some of the newer things around security in version 6, we had a big cybersecurity push in this case, is one of the things that we're seeing a lot of attacks nowadays are password spray attacks. These are can be launched from anywhere in the world. they kind of nibble at accounts. They usually have passwords that are known, commonly used, but bad passwords. If you have a directory of email addresses potentially published out on your public-facing website, and we know that for some organizations that's a requirement, but that does open those organizations up to these password spraying attacks where there is kind of not large amounts of traffic, but it's a form of a brute force attack where the bots or whatever it is that are actually doing it, that are acting as agents, will actually just kind of pick at maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different accounts at a time. They'll try password one that they know is bad, and then they'll wait a couple minutes and they'll try a different one, different password for those same accounts. And so one of the things that we've added in PortalGuard version 6 is this IP lockout. So not only can you, if you identify known bad IPs or blocks of IPs, then you can actually blacklist those directly. You can also enable this dynamic IP lockout, which has some configurable settings about, okay, how many, if the same IP is trying to authenticate with a handful or 5 or 10 or 20 different usernames, and it's failing those up to a certain threshold that's configurable, then we can notify the admin, we can dynamically block that, so that way, you're not those. One of the telltale or key signs with password spray attacks is still seeing account lockout, in, let's say, Active Directory. And so this is a nice thing to be able to block that. One of the insidious things that they do with these password spray attacks is actually, instead of the IPs directly contacting, let's say, an IDP like PortalGuard through the browser, what they actually do is they mimic Outlook clients or native mobile email clients. And instead of HTTP directly to an IDP, like PortalGuard, they actually route, those requests get routed through valid Office 365 servers. So the direct IP that we see is not the bad IP, it's actually a Microsoft server IP. And so you do not want to just block those in your network, because then you're blocking everybody that would come through those servers. So this is one of the things that we've come up to help with that. And we have a couple customers using this to great effect so far. Okay. Similar to not having two-factor required across the board, we actually added something called application-specific two-factor. So this is great, for example, if for things like email or your portal login, you don't want to require a full two-factor for everybody. But if they are going to a specific application that maybe has more sensitive information like financial aid, for example, then what we can do is you can mark that relying party, you can mark that website as something that does require multi-factor. And if the user has already done a 2FA to log in to PortalGuard, that's great, they get right in. But if they've only done single factor authentication up to that point, PortalGuard will step up the authentication. It will force them to do a full two-factor at that point in order to continue on and get into that app. We've definitely seen a lot of folks using that one. Another thing that we've done, another common request that we get is, oh, we want people on our LAN to be able to log in with just name and password, but if they're outside of our network or if they are outside of the country, we want to require them to do multi-factor. And so that is now very direct and very straightforward to configure with our updated contextual authentication. This version 2.0 uses direct conditions that you can use to say, all right, if they are on these LAN IPs, then they can log in with password only. However, if they are outside the country, then they can do two-factor. If they are in certain countries, maybe you can block access completely. And so being able to have these conditions relate directly to an authentication type or a block is very straightforward and much more easy to configure for admins. Okay. And continuing that theme of cybersecurity, which was a really big push in version 6. So in the proxy that we have, not only does it do single sign-on, but it has some cybersecurity features as well. So for example, the users themselves are typically not aware of the sessions that they have created while they're while they're in their browser. Sometimes they get logged into things that maybe they didn't even realize they were getting logged into. So with the proxy, as I mentioned, this is great for SSO to legacy apps, those that don't support identity federation. But so the proxy can actually monitor and keep track of all the sessions that the user has created during that browser session. And not only can it show the users, so for example here, this user's logged into 7 different websites. It allows users that control of being able to log out of individual ones right from this, like a single point, or being able to log out of all of them with one button. So this is a big win on the awareness that end users have over their sessions, as well as the control. So again, the proxy is so powerful. This is just one of those features related to that. Some of the other things that it can do, for example, is phishing. Everybody seems to have their own software that is either built into their email servers that try to winnow out all these different spam and phishing emails, but still some of them get through. So the proxy can act as a last line of defense to prevent access to those sites. So this is a really big win. Something that we feel very comfortable and strong about. So being able to block maybe on top level domains, maybe if they're going to IP address based sites, if there's certain heuristics that we have that can actually detect if it is a phishing URL because it contains the user's email. So being able to detect those at runtime, block them is again great as that last line of defense. And last on this is actually being able to, again, give the user some awareness of the password quality that they're using for these different sites. So in this case, at the top, you can see the account is marked as green. That is a very good password complexity. Yellow in this case, in the middle, being a suspect password that they may want to reconsider, and then red being one that they should absolutely stop the presses and change right away. So being able to see these things, again, have that end user or have the admin be aware of these things is just some of the ways that we're trying to increase that security posture of your organization. Okay, so we talked about the big 3 feature areas of PortalGuard. One of the other key differentiators is the ability to completely change the PortalGuard login screen, or actually not just the login screen, but all of the UI within PortalGuard. There's Neumann right there, and so again, you'll see that a little bit later, much closer. But being able to change the error messages, being able to change, actually have it in different languages if you want, the formatting, you actually have complete control over the UI. And if you have it's all CSS, and as I mentioned, we use the Bootstrap framework. So if you have those skills in-house, you can do that yourself. We can actually do a certain amount under our standard support, and we also have professional services if you want wholesale changes. Okay. Another note on the user interface is the accessibility. So this is important. Last year, we had a lot of customers that were telling us about Section 508, ADA, and so the new standard for accessibility for whether it's vision impaired, a whole host of different potential issues that people have where they cannot access websites or use them, is WCAG 2.0 level AA. And so that is the new national standard in the United States for accessibility. So PortalGuard itself, we made sure that last year, I think with version 5.6.2, we made WCAG 2.0 AA conformant. So not only does this increase the accessibility, so that way all your end users are included and they can use PortalGuard, but it also reduces liability. You're probably thinking, like, how does that even come into play? Well, one of the things that we have heard is that some law firms will actually go out proactively, try to find sites that, for example, state universities that receive this federal funding. They will then determine if the sites are conformant or not, and they will reach out to students at those sites and basically threaten the universities and these colleges with a class action lawsuit, or because they get the students involved, or use their services to make their websites conformant, with this newer standard. So it's very very underhanded, but so this is something that you want to keep in mind. I'm not sure if this is fully in effect yet at the national level, but I know that it was supposed to start at the end of last year and it did get slightly delayed. But PortalGuard itself, with that, you do not need to worry about it. It's just one of those boxes that we check. The default UI out of the box is WCAG 2.0 AA conformant. Okay. And so one of the last things I'll mention on the UI is being able to communicate with your end users is key nowadays. So whether it is right on the PortalGuard logon screen, being able to give these logon announcements, being able to actually target individual applications. So if someone's going to an application, we can show an announcement, or if you want to target just specific groups or organizational units within your environment, we can do that as well with these announcements. And so it's all WYSIWYG edited. You can have them start and stop at certain times. We've actually had some customers use the tracking on whether they dismiss it to as far as almost like a terms of use as well. And so you can report on that if you like. Okay. So we're getting closer to the demo, but so for example, one of the other things that we've done and we have available is on the admin side. PortalGuard itself has had a help desk console for a couple years, so being able to modify user accounts, being able to verbally authenticate users that call into your help desk, that when they do call in, you can actually use PortalGuard to help you identify them over the phone. But so being able to modify user accounts, whether it is taking actions that modify your directory, whether it's unlocking an account, resetting a password, expiring a password, or performing actions in PortalGuard and its user profiles. Those are all done from the help desk console. We also have a kind of read-only admin dashboard where, for example, you can actually see end-user specific details. If you need to say, oh, what policy are they using, or have they even enrolled a phone, things of that nature, you can look that up here. We also have real-time reports. There's a whole host of out-of-the-box reports. In version 6, this does require SQL, but in version 6, we actually made the reporting footprint 18 times smaller and 40 times faster by making some of those back-end SQL changes. Okay. And then last on this, one of the key things for any new customers is evaluating and purchasing a product is one aspect of it, but then actually deploying it is a whole other project. And so over the years, PortalGuard has worked with our customer base and we've put together best practices, email templates, timelines, things of that nature to really help you deploy PortalGuard, whether you're using it for password reset, single sign-on, or multi-factor. There's a lot of good information bundled into these deployment kits that you can leverage, to make your deployment that much smoother and easier. Okay. All right. So at this point, I'm going to throw it over to Kushan. And we're going to make sure, yeah, good, he's unmuted. So Kushan, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Greg. And thank you all for joining in. Here at Neumann, we are used PortalGuard heavily. But let me share some of our experience before PortalGuard. We had a free PWN open source password reset system. For SSO, we had ADFS because we are a Microsoft shop. Those free solutions are not free because free costs time and risk. And we didn't come up with complete solution for forced password reset and support other SSO method except SAML. We spent days maintaining and configuring those systems actually. That's not the only reason we picked PortalGuard. PortalGuard fit into our environment without any question, actually. PortalGuard brought us a complete solution. One of the reasons we picked PortalGuard is security. Security is our #1 concern, and PortalGuard increased our security as well. We are a Catholic college, and we had a big challenge supporting different age groups. PortalGuard responsive design and customability help us to support all the ages without any question. most of all the students forget their password at the beginning of the semester, and we had a big line at the help desk for resetting the password. With PortalGuard self-password reset, remove that line and reduce 90% of help desk calls. That's a big, huge for us. Currently, we are using 3 password reset method, cell phone and email, help desk call to receive OTP code, keeping simple and basics. Like I mentioned before, we had a ADFS for SSO. We are not able to support other identification method at that time. With PortalGuard, we can support cache, shibboleth, form-based, and more. Almost every SSO method to support any applications that we have on campus. Not only that, web portal with jump page provide us easy access to all of our application from one location. Students are very happy with that. That way, students don't have to log into each applications every time. And you can see the screenshot here. It lists 20 apps based on their permission, but we have a close to 50 apps that integrate with PortalGuard. Another advantage is access control through PortalGuard. For example, if we have an app that no way to control the permission, adding PortalGuard on top of the application, we gain a control over the permission. Also, currently we are using on-prem version of PortalGuard, and during the peak time, it's not a big spike, or it can handle all the students with one server. And also we are making the bridge to the cloud, and it's no hassles, and we're waiting for the right time to deploy that as well. And with reporting, PortalGuard reporting help us to find out all those metrics that we need, actually. And also we use the PortalGuard for activation, use activation with the beginning of the school career. I think that's enough talking, and let me show you some of our what we have and how we set up PortalGuard in our environment.
Okay.
All right.
All right, Kushan, I'm going to make you the presenter.
Sure. Okay.
There we go.
The
yep.
Request. Hold on. All right. Thank you, Craig.
Sure.
So here at Neumann, we all our students accessing the portal through the Neumann website. They come to the main website and go to the menu and access My NU. That's our portal. So let me show you how first time enrollment when they log in to the portal. Okay, I'm will pick a student. All right, and it asking the mobile information, and let me put my cell phone number. 78. Okay, and I got a OTP code right away.
And it's great. I noticed, Kushan, that you're able to, you allowed them to skip it a certain number of times. A nice usability feature.
Yes, that is true, Craig. We give them a 3 chance to skip, and if they pass that 3 times, they don't have no options to skip at all. So that's a big for us as well. And now we have to enroll this alternative email address. So and if I continue, you can see on the text here it takes 20 to 30 seconds, but it's very fast actually.
Yep.
And
I know, Kushan, one of the things too is you can actually block the school email domain from being used. So,
yes, that is true.
Prevent them from using the school email, and PortalGuard can block that in real time and let them know that they need to use an alternate one.
That is true, Greg. That is true. And actually, I can show you that in action as well. Let me show you that. If I log in again, now it forced me to, because I already add the phone number. Now it's asking me, hey, I didn't enroll with the email address. I have to put an email address. So let me add our Neumann email address here. So, edu.
I think you're missing a T on that. Yep.
Oh,
it was night.
Sorry again.
Yeah. It's always tough during a webinar.
Yeah.
Yep.
Night. Make sure that Neumann.edu. All right. And now you can see the domain is cannot be used. So the email domain, because we are blocking the Knights and the Neumann. We have a two domain controllers for the students and the faculty. So let me remove that and add a different email address. All right, it continues, and I will get a new OTP code in a few seconds.
One of the things on those OTPs, you can control the syntax of the OTPs. You can also control how long they're good for if they're not used. I think the default is 10 minutes.
Yes, correct. And if I have, for example, if I'm not able to access my email address right away, I can simply click over here, click the problem with the OTP, and I get the options, or I can send it to my cell phone again, or the email address, or I can call the help desk to get receive that OTP code. And continue, and it successfully log in. So this is our portal. From let me go back to the login page again and show you. Now I enroll with my phone and alternative email address, then how easy it is for students to reset their password. So I'm going to log out, and for this, I forgot my password, simply click forget password and type my username. Go. If I continue, it's automatically know the primary email address, and I receive the OTP code to reset my password. So let me type that in. And now I have the password change login, and I'm going to change my password. And it's very easy. You can see the complexity of the password showing on the screen as well. Here we go. Successfully log in. If I continue, just go to the other login page. Going to the other jump page. So from here, it's the students have access to their application. So one click away. If I click OneDrive, simply logging in without any questions. It's right logging in, and that's where same thing with the Blackboard. That's a CAS application. They log in without any questions, and same thing with say email. So one click away. So that's how easy at Neumann using PortalGuard. I mean, we got a lot of good feedback from the students. They're loving it, and it's easy for them to navigate and access to their applications they have access for.
Great.
All right.
All right.
Anything else, Craig? I mean, let me know if I missed anything, so I can show you that as well.
No, I think that's great. Yeah, and at this point, I'm going to go ahead and I'll take the presenter role back. And go ahead and share that. Okay. All right, so at this point, we can go ahead and we can open up the webinar to any questions.
Yeah, if there are any questions, please either open up the chat box and just ask them, or you can unmute yourself, and we'll be happy to answer anything. Greg, I did have one come in a little earlier. It says, can PortalGuard be load balanced or run in the cloud?
Okay. Yeah, definitely. So as I alluded to earlier, so PortalGuard is a software application. So it is designed from the ground up as what's called a RESTful web application. And so that means that all the data that's required in any one request is sent with that request. So if PortalGuard can be load balanced, we have a lot of customers, some with over 60,000 end users that have usage spikes, for example, that can be all 60,000 people logging in at the same time. That can be accomplished using 2 or 3 PortalGuard instances with a load balancer in front of them. And so one of the nice things about being a RESTful application is that if a two-factor authentication is being attempted by a user, there is nothing that requires a single PortalGuard instance to handle all steps of that multi-factor login, for the end user. So that can actually potentially be handled by different front-end PortalGuard servers as they're doing a multi-factor authentication. And so, it works. There's only like 1 or 2 different things you need to do on the PortalGuard side of things, where you have to match up some machine keys. But yeah, it is RESTful, so load balancing is very common. That can be potentially for you can have load balancing where you have an active setup, and that requires multiple PortalGuard licenses, or you can have an active-passive setup behind a load balancer. That can be achieved with a single PortalGuard license. You can actually run up to 4 concurrent PortalGuard instances using a single PortalGuard license. So you can actually have that load balancer automatically switch over to like a hut standby if needed, if you bring your primary one down for some reason, like for maintenance or whatnot. And so we have seen historically a lot of the second part of that question was, can it be used in the cloud? And so historically, we've seen a lot of people use PortalGuard on premises, but within the last couple of years, we've seen more and more customers go directly to running PortalGuard in the cloud. So that can be in AWS, it could be in Azure. I don't know if there are any other cloud vendors, but those seem to be the 2 big ones that we always run into. So yeah, it's very straightforward. It's actually PortalGuard. It's transparent to PortalGuard, whether it's running on-prem or in the cloud, as long as it can reach the domain controller or your Active Directory. Then that's really the primary requirement besides SQL, which is an optional optional configuration. Okay.
Okay, great. Yeah. Any more questions out there? Feel free to use the chat. There is another one that came through. Is there a limit on the 2-factor types that can be used on a single PortalGuard server?
Oh, okay. Yeah, interesting. Yeah, there is not a limit. So on the slide where I think there were 15 different types, you can use any or all of those 15 types. There isn't a limit within PortalGuard. Those are all just different options that we work with or integrate with. So some of them do require third-party accounts. So for example, Duo Push is one that you create an account with them, and then you enter that account information within PortalGuard, and then it's available for use through PortalGuard. Same thing with the Voice Biometric. That's a company called Voice IT, and so that one you can get an account, and then you can use that as that second factor. So yeah, but otherwise, no, you can mix and match as much as you want. Again, we see different types. So for example, YubiKeys are hardware-based tokens. Sometimes we'll see customers use SMS because it's either very, very cost effective. If you use a third-party messaging provider, it's less than a penny per text for a lot of these messaging providers nowadays. So you can kind of combine text messages as, let's say, maybe one of the still more common ones, maybe for the IT folks, the more privileged folks, with access to more sensitive data. Maybe they use hardware-based tokens like HOTP or YubiKeys. So it is definitely not a one-size-fits-all when it comes to PortalGuard. With that type of support, you can definitely take the best of breed and integrate them with PortalGuard as we try to maintain that openness, and level of flexibility.
Okay. Yeah, it looks like those were the only questions that came through.
Okay.
So thank you very much, Greg. On behalf of the PortalGuard team, we'd like to extend a special thank you to Kushan and Neumann University and his team for working together with us to make this available to you all. Also like to thank everybody for attending today. You will be receiving a link to the recording before the end of the day. We'll also include some contact information if there are any follow-up questions. Feel free to reach out. Other than that, everybody have a great afternoon. I think that's a wrap.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right.